Hey, what's going on, Guardians? Gray here with another Destiny 2 video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Ikelos SMG that just recently got reissued to us in Season of Arrivals. This came back to us with some really interesting new perks on it, and I want to take a look at all of it, talk about what I think could potentially be the PvE God Roll as well as the PvP God Roll, and just talk about all of the different options you have with this weapon. So if you enjoy the video, please leave a like below and consider hitting that subscribe button for me. We are punching up to 1,000 subscribers. We are at 970 as of the recording of this video, so your help is greatly appreciated with helping me hit that goal. But with that being said, let's dive into the weapon and take a look at what we're working with here. The first thing I want to point out with the Ikelos SMG is a unique property that it has, and that it functions like a 7th Seraph weapon. If you're unaware, last season in Season of the Worthy, there were a few weapons that were the 7th Seraph weapons, and they were really unique in the sense that they could produce Warmind cells. If you had a Warmind cell mod equipped anywhere on your armor, your weapons would begin to produce these Warmind cells, and they would drop on the ground, and you can blow them up. You could do a lot of different stuff depending on what mods you have equipped, but all of these Ikelos weapons also have that same functionality. They have access to those Warmind cells, and it's pretty interesting, actually. It's really cool, and it's a really unique property that you can take advantage of with this Ikelos SMG. I wanted to point it out because it's pretty important. You're going to be using this gun as a means of ad clear for trash tier mobs, and those Warmind cells definitely help with that. And it's super easy. You could throw on like the global reach mod. It costs 1 energy. You could put it on almost any piece of armor and have your Warmind cells just being generated for you with this weapon. So definitely something to take advantage of. With that being said, we're going to take a look at all of the perks available on this weapon, and I'll talk about what I think you might want to go after as far as PvE and PvP. So starting off, we're going to head over to LiQWYD, and it's a really great website that shows us all of the perks that are available on every gun. We can get it all nice and clean up here on the screen for you so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But starting off in the first column, this weapon has access to barrel mods, like most weapons do. And there's a few options that you could choose from because this is an SMG. So it's going to come down to a little bit of personal preference, and it depends on what platform you're playing on. You're either going to want to focus more on range or stability or handling, or a mix of all three. It's really up to you. That's the nice thing about these sort of close quarters SMGs and stuff like that, is that you really kind of get to choose what barrel mods you want. And as long as you have something that isn't hurting you, you should be good. But my personal recommendations, I would go with something like small bore, which is going to give you additional range and stability. It's a nice little best of both worlds kind of mod. But you could go with something like fluted barrel, which isn't going to give you range, but it's going to give you extra stability and handling. There's a lot of great options here. If you are an indecisive kind of Guardian, you could go with corkscrew rifling, which is going to give you +5 to range, stability, and handling. Not a bad option at all. There's a lot of choices here. There's some that I would maybe avoid, like full bore. You don't really want to lose stability and handling. You want to avoid having those things negatively affected by any of your mods on this weapon, because it's a fully automatic weapon. The more stability you have, the better. And being that it's an SMG, you don't want it to feel sluggish either. You want to maintain a semi-decent handling stat. So again, I would recommend small bore, corkscrew rifling, or something like fluted barrel are definitely solid options in this column. Looking at the second column, we have a few options, and I've been really surprised lately at how often I've been wanting to use tactical mag, especially in PvE. It's a really nice perk. It gives you +5 stability, +10 to your reload speed, and +10 to your magazine. You really can't do much better than that. If you're going for max range, of course you're going to want to look at things like accurized rounds or Seraph rounds, because that will help you stretch out the range of this weapon as far as it can possibly go. But the perks we're pairing with this in the other columns might make it so you don't really need that range as much as you might think. So I am personally recommending tactical mag in this category for that additional magazine size. The stability and reload speed is just a nice utility all around. Of course, you can go max range if you would like. It's pretty straightforward in the second column. You just want to enhance certain aspects of the weapon, and I think increasing the mag size, getting a little bonus stability is the best way to go, especially for PvE. Now, when we look at the third column and the fourth column, there's some interesting options here, and there's some good synergies here between the different perks and the columns, and I want to talk about them a little bit. So as it was pointed out to me, Threat Detector is a fantastic perk on this gun. It's not something I typically strive for on any of my weapons, but for whatever reason, being that this is a SMG, it's really a fantastic perk, and it pairs well with some of our perks in the other column. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but Threat Detector is definitely going to be something you want on this gun because it's a very close range SMG. I mean, it's a close quarters type of weapon. You're going to be up close and personal, and proccing that Threat Detector perk, it stacks up to 2 times. You're going to get increased reload, stability, and handling when those enemies are nearby. Those are fantastic things to take advantage of, and when we pair it with something else in the other column, it makes a beautiful combination. Alternatively, we have things like Subsistence, which makes it so every time you get a kill, it reloads a portion of your magazine, but it drops your maximum ammo capacity. And on SMGs, man, it really drops that ammo capacity. I mean, you're left with like 100 rounds, 150 rounds. You're going to have to constantly be looking for ammo if you want to take advantage of Subsistence on an SMG. I personally would not recommend something like that. Grave Robber is not a bad option, as your melee kills will reload a portion of the magazine, and it grants that ammunition. It does for primary weapons, so you're not pulling that from reserves. It's going to magically give you that ammo back in your weapon, so it's not a bad option. I wouldn't say it's the best perk, but I wouldn't be angry at it either. We have access to dynamic sway reduction as well. This is slowly becoming one of my favorite perks for any automatic weapon, and it's definitely going to tie into what I think is the PvP God Roll. Dynamic sway reduction, it gives you improved accuracy and stability the longer you hold down the trigger. So as you're shooting that weapon, you're just getting more accurate, more forgiveness on your gun. It's fantastic in things like PvP because you can just laser people and land all of your headshots and get that optimal TTK. Moving on to the fourth column, we have a couple things we need to talk about. Remember, I was talking about Threat Detector in the previous column and how it procs when you're nearby other enemies. We have another perk available to us that synergizes with that perfectly, and that's going to be Surrounded. Surrounded is not something we see too often on a weapon, but it's an extremely strong perk when you can take advantage of it. And Surrounded states that this weapon gains bonus damage when 3 or more enemies are in close proximity. So if you're in close proximity, which you most likely will be, being that this is an SMG, you're going to be able to proc Threat Detector and Surrounded at the same time. So you're getting increased reload, handling, and stability, as well as bonus damage. And if you throw on a Surrounded spec mod, which you can get from the Black Armory vendor, 801, if you don't have it, definitely pick that mod up. If you throw on that Surrounded spec mod, it's going to help you out even further, makes the buff a little more forgiving, it sticks around for a minute, and it's a 40% damage increase. It's one of the best damage increases in the game, being it's not the most powerful, being that you have to be nearby. It's not necessarily good for bosses and stuff like that, but you're typically not using a primary weapon in that situation anyway. So Threat Detector and Surrounded is a fantastic combination. You can really take advantage of it with this type of weapon. And remember, you're getting those Warmind cells as well. And that combination with Warmind cells, Threat Detector, and Surrounded makes this thing an ad clearing machine. Alternatively, we do have access to things like Demolitionist, which is a really strong perk, makes it so the kills with the gun give you grenade energy back. And when you throw your grenade, it reloads your weapon. Definitely a good perk for all around PvE use. And I really want to give a quick shout. And I would say that you don't necessarily want to go after these rolls, these God rolls, until you've leveled up your Recaster all the way for the season. One of the last perks that you get in the Recaster makes it so these seasonal weapons or these engram weapons drop with 2 perks in the final column. And that's going to make it a hell of a lot easier to go after the God roll you desire. And it's going to give you more options if you happen to get lucky. You could get Surrounded and Demolitionist and be able to swap between the two. So it's definitely for the sake of your time, it's worth leveling up that recaster before you pursue these God Rolls. But Demolitionist isn't a bad perk at all. We also have Vorpal Weapon in this column, which isn't bad. It's not a bad option, but like I said before, you're not typically using primary weapons like this to melt bosses. But it's not bad if you got it as your second perk in the column. If you got Surrounded in Vorpal Weapon, I wouldn't be angry at it. But I would say the best ones to go after in this slot would be Surrounded, number one, but be happy if you get Demolitionist. As far as PvP goes, we also have access to Tap the Trigger. This is a really cool weapon in the sense that we have both dynamic sway reduction and Tap the Trigger. Tap the Trigger grants a short period of increased stability and accuracy on the initial trigger pull. So right off the bat, as soon as you shoot, you get a boost to stability, and then right as that wears off, dynamic sway reduction kicks in and continues to boost your stability further. So it just makes this thing an absolute laser beam in the Crucible, so definitely something to keep in mind. There's some really cool options here, and this is a very powerful primary SMG that we have access to. So that's all of the perks and mods that we have access to for this gun. I would recommend using in PvE using like a minor spec, major spec, or taken spec type of mod to increase that damage. But if you have Surrounded, you 100% have to go with the Surrounded spec mod in that slot. It just makes it more utilitarian, makes it have better ease of use so that you can get the most out of this gun. So we'll transition now and sort of sum it up a little bit. I know that is a lot of information that I just went over. I like to do these summaries at the end of what I think the PvE and PvP God Rolls would be that I personally am going to pursue. Hopefully this information helps you out and you go after these roles as well. So the gray certified PvE God Roll that I would recommend would definitely be in the first column. You'd want something like corkscrew rifling, small bore, or fluted barrel, things that are going to buff your stability, handling, and range. I'm going to leave that up to you guys. This first column really isn't going to hurt you no matter what you get, unless you get something that just murders your handling. You want to try and avoid having your handling go down, but anything that buffs stability, range, or handling is a fantastic option in this first perk, in this first slot rather. I would say, me personally, I'm going to go for small bore. I've been enjoying that a lot with these automatic weapons. And the second perk slot, I'm going to say tactical mag will be my recommendation. You get that increased mag size, extra stability, and reload speed. But don't be mad if you get Seraph rounds or accurized rounds. Those are also fantastic options. You could get things like flared magwell, but I'm going to say firmly that tac mag is your best option in this category. But don't be mad if you get something that boosts your range. In the third column, for the PvE God Roll, I'm going to have to say Threat Detector all day long. And that's strange for me. I've never wanted a gun with Threat Detector more than I do on this SMG. It pairs really well with Surrounded, and it pairs really well with SMGs. So definitely go for Threat Detector in this column for your PvE roll. In the fourth column, remember I said once you upgrade that recaster, you could get 2 perks in this column. Number one perk you want for PvE is Surrounded all day long. You have to get Surrounded, and that Threat Detector combination makes this weapon just pop off. So you definitely want to go for Surrounded, but alternatively, Demolitionist is another fantastic option as well. So Surrounded or Demolitionist will help you out in this column the most. We do have things like Vorpal Weapon, which aren't going to hurt you by any means, but they're definitely not the most beneficial option. So that's going to sum it up for the PvE God Roll. Moving on to the PvP God Roll. This weapon's a little unique. Not that it's a meta weapon or anything, but it can definitely shred and it can definitely slay out in the Crucible. Looking at that first column, you're going to want to go with max range as much as you can. You're going to want probably Hammer Forge Rifling is going to give you +10 to range with no negative benefits. You could go with full bore, but it has a lot of drawbacks. It's going to decrease your stability and handling, and those are things we want to avoid, but you may be able to offset that if you have things like dynamic sway and tap the trigger. So the choice is yours. You just want to go for max range on this weapon. In the second column for PvP, you of course, again, continuing with that theme, you're going to want accurized rounds or Seraph rounds. Those both push your range out as far as it can possibly go, which is what you want in the Crucible. In that third column, in my mind, there's really only one option for PvP. That's going to be dynamic sway reduction, which gives you that increased stability as you hold down the trigger. Pretty straightforward option. Dynamic sway is fantastic. Don't sleep on it. In that fourth column for PvP, I have a couple of recommendations. You could pair tap the trigger with dynamic sway and just have an absolute laser beam of an SMG, or you could take advantage of Vorpal Weapon. Vorpal Weapon in the Crucible is not a bad option. You don't want to sleep on it. It gives you additional damage against Guardians with their supers active. So it's not bad. It's pretty situational. Vorpal Weapon is a very situational perk, but you'd be surprised how it could help you out in a clutch situation to help you take down a super. But my personal recommendation would be tap the trigger in this column just to make this thing an absolute laser beam. As far as masterworks go, guys, it's really personal preference and it depends on the platform that you're going to be on. I would recommend either stability or range, whatever you want to go for. If you feel like it's a little unwieldy, you're having a hard time controlling it, go for that stability masterwork. It's definitely worth going for. And if not, go for the range masterwork. It'll push it out a little bit further. But remember, you don't necessarily need the range as much as you might need the stability, because we want to make sure we're taking advantage of things like threat detector and surrounded. Remember, this thing makes Warmind cells. It's an ad clearing machine. You definitely want to pursue one before the season ends and get your hands on a solid roll, because it's not power capped. You'll be able to use this for the next few seasons. A very solid option for PvE all around. Make sure to get your hands on one. So that's going to sum it up for the Ikelos SMG, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative in any way at all. If you did, again, leave a like below and consider hitting that subscribe button for me. I would greatly appreciate your support, and leave a comment down below with any weapons you want me to cover in the future. I've been really enjoying doing these God Roll videos. It's a really fun way to really dissect a weapon and see what options are best for every situation. Thank you for stopping by. Take care and good luck hunting those God Rolls.